You didn't contribute, so you don't eat. My son, Robert's, words echoed through the living room, which was packed with guests. I stood frozen in the doorway of my own house, the house I had given him, holding the coconut custard pie I had prepared with so much love for Christmas Eve. 30 people stared at me in silence. 30 witnesses to my humiliation. My daughter-in-law, Mary, smiled behind Robert, her champagne-coloured dress glistening under the Christmas lights. The guests whispered among themselves, some with pity, others with morbid curiosity. "Robert, I am your mother," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but feeling my hands tremble. "And I appreciate everything you did in the past, Mum. But that was then. Now this is my house, my table, my dinner, and only those who contribute to this family eat." His words cut like knives. "These guests are my business partners, people who generate cash, who bring value. You just live off memories." An older woman sitting nearby choked on her glass of wine. A man in a grey suit looked at me with a mixture of horror and pity. But Mary, my own daughter-in-law, whom I had welcomed like a daughter, moved closer to her husband. "Amelia," Mary said, with that sweet voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. "You understand, right? Tonight is special. It's to celebrate Robert's success. His company is growing. We have new contracts. It's a night for achievers." "But I raised this achiever," I murmured, feeling my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "I sold my house, my jewelry, everything I had so he could go to college, so he could get to this point." "Exactly, Mum. That was your contribution, in the past. But now what do you offer us? A homemade custard pie? Stories from when Dad was alive? Lessons about how poor we were?" Robert took the dessert from my hands and placed it on a side table, as if it were trash. "Look at our guests. Everyone came with expensive gifts, with business contacts, with opportunities. What did you bring?" The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear even the sound of the glasses touching the lips of the guests, who were drinking uncomfortably at the scene. "I brought a mother's love," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Mum. Love doesn't build companies. Love doesn't buy this house, or this food, or these wines that cost $300 a bottle." Robert pointed to the elegantly decorated table. "All of this was paid for by Mary and me, with our hard work, our effort, our intelligence." Mary nodded, taking her husband's hand. "Amelia, you yourself told us this house was our wedding gift. Didn't you want us to be independent? Well, we are. And independent people invite whoever they want to their table." A tear rolled down my cheek, but I quickly wiped it away. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me completely destroyed. The guests began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. A woman whispered to her companion, "This is awful." "All right," I said, straightening my shoulders and regaining all the dignity I had left. "I understand perfectly. This is your house, your dinner, your decision." I turned to leave, but before walking out, I stopped on the threshold. Without turning around, in a clear voice that everyone could hear, I said, "Enjoy your dinner of achievers. May every bite taste of the victory you so richly deserve." I walked down the driveway, hearing the door close behind me with a dry thud. My heels echoed on the cold December pavement, marking a steady rhythm as I moved away from the only family I had left in the world. When I reached my small apartment, I sat down in my old wooden rocking chair and looked out the window toward the brightly lit house in Los Angeles. I could see the shadows of the guests moving, laughing, celebrating. Robert was probably telling a business anecdote, being the perfect host. I smiled for the first time all night. A smile no one could see, a smile that held secrets that neither Robert nor Mary imagined. They knew nothing about the documents that Henry had hidden before he died. They knew nothing about the bank accounts, the investments, the properties that their father had secretly put in my name. They didn't know that the poor, dependent widow they had just humiliated held in her hands the power to change their lives forever. But they didn't know what I was about to do. The next day, I woke up to the sound of my phone. 30 missed calls from Robert. I smiled while making my coffee and decided not to answer any of them. Let him wait. Let him feel even a little bit of the anxiety I had lived with for years, wondering if my only son truly loved me. But it wasn't the phone that worried me that morning. It was the wooden chest I had kept under my bed for 5 years, ever since the day Henry died. That day, as I cried over his passing, he had taken my hands with the little strength he had left and whispered something to me that would change my life forever. Amelia, my love, when I'm gone, go to the bank, ask for safety deposit box number 412. The code is the date of our first kiss. His eyes closed forever after those words, and I thought he was delirious from the medication. For months, I ignored his words. I was too busy crying, too busy selling our things to pay for Robert's college, too busy being the perfect mother who sacrifices everything for her son. Until one day, 5 years later, curiosity overcame my grief. I went to the bank with my heart pounding as if it were about to explode. The clerk looked at me strangely when I mentioned the safety deposit box. But when I said the code, March 15th, 1973, her eyes went wide. Mrs. Amelia, we've been waiting for you for years, she had told me. Your husband left very specific instructions. Inside that box, I found my true inheritance. Not just cash, though there was plenty. Henry had been smarter than I imagined. For years, in secret, he had invested every dollar he earned in real estate, in stocks, in investment funds I didn't even know existed. Everything in my name, everything legally protected so no one could touch it. But what impacted me the most was the letter I found on top of all the documents. Henry's shaky handwriting, evidently written when he was already very sick. My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I know you will want to give everything to Robert, because that is the generous woman you are. But I beg you not to do it immediately. Our son needs to learn the value of things, the value of effort, the value of respect. Give him everything when he proves he deserves it, not before. I trust your wisdom to know when that moment will be. I love you forever. For 5 years, I kept that secret like the most precious treasure. For 5 years, I watched Robert become a successful man, but also an arrogant one. I watched him marry Mary, an ambitious woman who loved him, yes, but who also loved everything he could give her. I watched as he slowly distanced himself from me, as if my presence reminded him of times of poverty he preferred to forget. And for those 5 years, I continued to pretend to be the poor widow who depended on her son's charity. I continued living in my small apartment, buying clothes at discount stores, cooking with coupons. All while my bank account grew month after month, with the interest and dividends from Henry's investments. When I gave Robert and Mary the family house as a wedding gift, they thought it was my last great sacrifice, that I was left with nothing. They didn't know that house. In reality, I had bought with money from one of their father's investments. They didn't know I could buy 10 identical houses without even touching the principal capital. But yesterday, on Christmas Eve, Robert had crossed a line that there was no returning from. It wasn't just the public humiliation, it wasn't just the cruel words, it was the way he looked at me, as if I were a burden, a nuisance, someone to be ashamed of. That morning, as the phone continued to ring with his desperate calls, I pulled the chest out from under my bed and placed it on the table in my small living room. Inside were all the documents Henry had left, plus those I had accumulated during these 5 years. Properties in the heart of New York City valued at more than $2 million. Company stocks that had multiplied their value. Savings accounts in 3 different banks. An investment portfolio that generated more cash in 1 month than Robert earned with his company in 6 months. But there was something else. Something that even Henry didn't know when he died. It turned out that one of the properties he had bought years ago, a seemingly worthless plot of land on the outskirts of Dallas, was now worth a fortune because the government had decided to build the new Dallas/Fort Worth International Airport there. I took my cup of coffee and went out onto the small balcony of my apartment. From there, I could see Robert's house. Mary was taking out trash bags from last night's dinner, moving with that artificial elegance she had perfected during their years of marriage. The phone rang again. This time I answered. "Mum, thank goodness. I've been calling you all morning. Listen, about the other night." Robert's voice sounded nervous, different from the arrogant confidence of a few hours earlier. "Yes, son. What's wrong?" I asked, with a calm that surprised even myself. "Well, maybe I was a little harsh with you. Mary says some guests commented that maybe I didn't handle the situation well." A little harsh. Those were his words. As if humiliating your mother in front of 30 strangers was just a little harsh. "And what do you think, Robert? Not what Mary says, but you." There was a long silence. I could imagine him, standing in his luxurious office, looking out the window, trying to find the words that wouldn't make him look like the villain of the story. I think maybe we could have lunch together today, just you and me, to clear things up." I smiled. Not a smile of happiness, but a smile of someone who had finally found the perfect moment to start her plan. "Of course, son. I'd love to have lunch with you." But as I hung up the phone, my eyes focused on the business card I had kept in my wallet for years. Hugh Miller, the best lawyer in the city, the same one who had helped Henry with all the secret investments. It was time to make a call that would change everything forever. Hugh Miller hadn't changed at all in those 5 years. His office was still the sanctuary of dark wood and law books I remembered from when Henry was alive. When I entered, he rose from his desk with that warm smile that had always given me confidence. "Amelia, it's a pleasure to see you, although I assume it's not a social visit." His grey eyes studied me with the same intensity as always. Hugh was one of those men who could read people like open books. "No, Hugh. I think the time has come to do what Henry asked me to." I placed the chest on his desk and began taking out the documents one by one. "I need you to help me recover everything that is mine." Hugh reviewed each paper with the meticulousness of a surgeon. From time to time, he whistled softly, especially when he got to the documents for the land where the new airport would be built. After an hour of silence, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with admiration. "Amelia, your husband was a genius. This is worth—" He did some calculations on his calculator. "We are talking about close to $8 million, and that's without counting the properties whose value has increased over these years. $8 million. While my son was telling me that I didn't contribute anything, I had a fortune in my hands that he couldn't even imagine." "There's something else, Hugh." I pulled out an envelope I had kept at the bottom of the chest. "Henry also bought shares in the construction company that is in charge of the airport project. Apparently, he knew something that no one else knew at the time." Hugh's eyes widened when he saw the stock certificates. "Amelia, these shares are now worth—" "My goodness, they are worth almost $3 million more. Your husband not only invested intelligently, but he somehow had insider information." "What do you need me to do?" I asked, feeling for the first time in years that I was in control of my own life. "Well, legally everything is in order. Everything is in your name. All the documents are sealed and certified. But there's something that intrigues me. Hugh got up and walked to the window. Why now, Amelia? What happened to make you decide to activate all this after 5 years? I told him everything. The humiliation on Christmas Eve, Robert's cruel words, the way he had treated me as if I were an annoying stranger. Hugh listened in silence, nodding occasionally with an increasingly serious expression. I understand, and I assume you have a plan. Yes, I do, but I need your help to execute it perfectly. I approached his desk and began to explain what I had in mind. First, I want you to transfer everything to active accounts. Second, I want you to investigate the financial situation of Robert's company. And third, I paused dramatically, I want us to buy the building where his office is located. Hugh smiled for the first time all meeting. Amelia, I think Henry would be very proud of you. We spent the rest of the morning organizing the details. Hugh would make the necessary calls, activate the accounts, and begin the process of buying the building where Robert's company was located. Everything discreetly, of course. Everything through shell companies and legal representatives. One more thing, Hugh. I want you to find out if there is any property for sale near where Robert lives. Something big, something ostentatious, something that when he sees it, he knows the new owner has a lot of money. You're going to move near him. I'm going to move exactly across the street from him. When I left Hugh's office, I felt like a completely different woman. My steps were firmer, my back straighter, my smile more genuine. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't the poor, helpless widow I pretended to be. I was Amelia, the woman who had the power to change lives with a simple phone call. But before executing my plan, I had to keep the appointment I had made with Robert. The lunch where he would try to fix things with cheap words and mediocre excuses. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes late, something I had never done in my life. Robert was already sitting at a corner table, checking his phone with that look of importance he had perfected in recent years. When he saw me arrive, he stood up and gave me a kiss on the cheek, as if nothing had happened. "Mom, you look good. Did you sleep well last night?" His voice had that falseness he used when he was trying to avoid uncomfortable conversations. "I slept perfectly, son. Like I haven't slept in years." I sat down across from him and studied his face. The same eyes as Henry, but without the warmth. The same smile, but without the sincerity. "Listen, about the other night," he began, but I raised my hand to stop him. "You don't need to explain anything, Robert. I understand your position perfectly." He seemed confused by my calm. He was probably expecting tears, reproaches, pleas for forgiveness. He wasn't expecting this serenity, which I didn't even know where it came from. "Seriously? Because Mary thought maybe I was too direct with you." Mary is right about some things. I picked up my napkin and placed it on my lap with the elegance I had learned from watching the wives of rich men. "You were very direct, very clear, and that's fine." "It's fine." Robert looked genuinely surprised. "Of course. You told me exactly what you think of me. You told me I don't contribute, that I just live off memories, that I'm worthless in your new life. Those are very valuable truths, son." The waiter approached to take our order, but Robert dismissed him with a gesture. His attention was completely focused on me, trying to decipher what was behind my words. "Mum, I didn't say you're worthless." "No? Then tell me, Robert, according to you, what is my worth?" My voice was soft, almost sweet, but there was something in my eyes that made him shift uncomfortably in his seat. You're worth a lot, Mum. You're my mother. It's just that—" He stopped, searching for the right words. It's just that I'm poor. It's just that I have nothing to offer you and your new life. It's just that I'm an embarrassing reminder of times you prefer to forget. I finished the sentences he didn't dare to say. That's not true. No. I took out my phone and placed a photograph I had taken from his social media account on the table. It was a picture of the Christmas Eve dinner, all his guests smiling elegantly around the table. Where am I in this photo, Robert? Where is the mother who raised you, who sold everything she had to pay for your college? Robert looked at the photo and then looked at me. For the first time, I saw something akin to shame in his eyes. Mum, what happened last night was a mistake. I was stressed, I had drunk a little, the guests were important for my business. Ah, so when you drink and you're under pressure, your true personality comes out. Interesting. I got up from the table with the same elegance with which I had sat down. Thank you for lunch, son. It has been very revealing. Wait, where are you going? We haven't even ordered the food. I stopped next to his chair and put my hand on his shoulder. Robert, last night you told me that only those who contribute eat. Well, today I discovered that you're right. It's time for me to learn to truly contribute. I left the restaurant, leaving him open-mouthed, confused, and probably more worried than before. But he didn't know that his real worries were just beginning. That afternoon, Hugh called me with news that exceeded my wildest expectations. Amelia, I have extraordinary news. Hugh's voice sounded excited on the phone. First, I've activated all your accounts. The cash is available and generating interest starting today. Second, I found very interesting information about Robert's company. I sat down in my rocking chair, the same one from which I had observed my humiliation the night before, but now I felt like a queen on her throne. Tell me everything, Hugh. Well, it turns out that Robert's company isn't as solid as he claims. He has several significant bank loans, and one of them is due in 3 months. He needs to renew it or get a bank guarantee for $500,000, or he'll be in serious trouble. A smile spread across my lips. And the third piece of news? The house across the street from Robert's is for sale. It's a 3-story mansion with gardens, a pool, and a 6-car garage. It costs $1,200,000, but the owner needs to sell fast because he's moving abroad. If you offer cash, he'll let you have it for $1 million. Buy it. Today. Are you sure, Amelia? That's a lot of money for revenge. Hugh, this isn't revenge. This is education. Buy the house, buy the building for Robert's offices, and find out who handles his bank loans. I have a feeling we're going to need that information very soon. That night, while I was having my vegetable soup and watching the news, my phone rang. It was Mary. Amelia, how are you? Robert told me about lunch today. He says you left very strangely. Hello, Mary. I'm very well. Thanks for asking. My voice was pure honey, with no trace of resentment. Listen, about the other night. Well, you know how Robert is when he's under pressure. He didn't mean it. You will always be welcome in our home. That's kind of you to say that. Would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow? We could cook together like before, when we were first married. When they were first married, Mary came to my apartment almost every day. I taught her to cook, to manage household finances, even to deal with Robert's mood swings. She was like the daughter I never had. Until my son's success started to change her, too. I would love to. Mary, what time? Does 6 o'clock work? We can make that lasagna Robert loves so much. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and started looking for luxury moving companies. If I was going to move into my new mansion, I had to do it in style. I also searched for interior decorators. I wanted that when Robert and Mary woke up in a week, There would be a mansion across the street from their house that clearly belonged to someone with a lot of money. The next day, Hugh called me early. All set. Amelia, the house is yours. The papers are signed. The transfer is done. I also bought the office building. You are now officially the owner of the place where your son works, and the loans. Here's where it gets interesting. It turns out that the bank handling Robert's biggest loan is undergoing a restructuring. They are selling several of their assets, including some loan portfolios. If you wanted to, you could specifically buy Robert's loan. That would mean I would be his creditor. Exactly. He would owe the cash to you, not the bank. Do it. Hugh, buy that loan too. Amelia, are you sure about all this? You're spending almost $3 million in 1 week. Hugh, I have 8 million liquid and investments for 3 million more. I am investing less than 30% of my net worth in my son's education. It's the best investment I can make. That afternoon, I arrived at Robert's house exactly at 6 o'clock. Mary opened the door with a genuine smile, dressed in jeans and a coral-colored blouse, as if we were truly going to spend an afternoon of mother and daughter cooking together. Amelia, I'm so glad you came. I already bought all the ingredients. She gave me a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and guilt. Robert wasn't home. According to Mary, he had an important meeting with investors. A meeting that probably had to do with his financial problems, although he hadn't told his wife. We cooked in silence for the first few minutes, as we used to do. Mary was chopping onions while I prepared the sauce. It was strange to be back in the kitchen of my old house, using the utensils that were once mine, but feeling like a stranger. Amelia, about the other night, Mary started, without looking up from the onions. You don't need to explain anything, dear. I understand your position perfectly. Seriously? Mary looked at me in surprise, exactly as Robert had at lunch. Of course. You have built a successful life. You have important friends, prosperous businesses, a social position to maintain. I am just the poor mother who reminds you of difficult times. That's not true. You are not poor. You are… What am I, Mary? I looked directly into her eyes. Tell me exactly what I am in your lives now. Mary put the knife down on the cutting board and approached me. You are Robert's mother. You are the woman who taught me to cook, who comforted me when I had my miscarriage, who treated me like a daughter from day one. But yesterday I was none of that. Yesterday I was just a nuisance at your perfect dinner. Robert was stressed. The company is not going through its best moment. He has a lot of pressure. There it was. The information I needed, confirmed by Mary herself. Problems at the company? What kind of problems? I shouldn't tell you this, but… Mary lowered her voice as if someone could hear us. Robert has to renew a very large loan in 3 months. If he doesn't succeed, we could lose everything. The house, the company, everything. My goodness, it's that serious. He doesn't want me to worry, but I see him staying up late reviewing numbers, making calls. Last night, after you left, he was in his office until 0 hours 4 minutes. And there's no way to get the cash. He needs $500,000 as collateral, or someone to sign as a guarantor. But who is going to guarantee that amount? His rich friends from last night are just that, dinner friends. When it comes to real cash, they disappear. We continued cooking, but now I had all the information I needed. Robert was desperate, even though he hadn't told his wife directly. His arrogance last night had only been a mask to hide his terror. When the lasagna was in the oven, we sat in the living room with a glass of wine. Mary seemed relieved to have shared her worries with someone. You know, Amelia, sometimes I miss when we were poorer but happier, when Robert didn't have all this pressure, when we didn't have to keep up these appearances. And have you told him? How can I tell him that? He has worked so hard to get here. It would be like telling him that all his effort wasn't worth it. Just then, we heard the door open. Robert was coming home, and by the sound of his steps, he was not in a good mood. "How was the meeting?" Mary asked when he entered the living room. "I don't want to talk about that right now." Robert saw me sitting on his sofa, and his expression softened slightly. "Hello, Mum. I didn't know you were coming today." Mary invited me for dinner. We made lasagna. Robert sat in his favourite armchair, the same armchair where Henry used to read the newspaper every morning. He looked defeated, tired, very different from the self-assured man who had humiliated me 24 hours earlier. "Robert, is everything all right?" I asked with the sweetest voice I could find. He looked at me as if evaluating how much he could tell me. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Business is complicated. Mum, very complicated. Is there anything I can help with?" Robert almost smiled, but not with happiness, but with bitter irony. "You help? With what, Mum? With your prayers?" There it was again. The arrogance, the contempt disguised as realism. But this time, instead of hurting me, it gave me exactly the motivation I needed to continue with my plan. "You're right, son. What could I do?" I stood up and picked up my purse. "Dinner smells delicious, Mary, but I think it's better if I leave. You two need time to talk about your important things." "Mum, you don't have to go," Mary began, but I was already walking toward the door. "Have a good night. And Robert, I hope you solve all your problems very soon." I left the house and walked slowly toward my apartment, knowing that they were both watching me from the window. Robert was probably thinking that he had been too harsh with me again, and Mary was wondering why I had reacted with such calm. Neither of them had any idea that the most interesting part of my plan would begin tomorrow. At 0 hours 8 minutes the next morning, 3 moving trucks arrived in front of Robert's house. From the window of my apartment, I could see him and Mary peering out curiously, wondering who the new millionaire neighbour moving into the mansion that had been vacant for months was. Hugh had done a perfect job. Not only had he bought the house, but he had also hired the best decorators in the city to furnish it with ostentatious but elegant luxury. Italian furniture, original artwork, a mahogany library, everything that screamed someone with a lot of cash lives here. My phone rang while I was watching the spectacle. "Good morning, Miss Amelia. This is Stephen, the head of the moving company. What time do you plan to arrive to supervise the installation?" "I'll arrive at noon, Stephen. I want everything to be perfect." "Of course, ma'am. I also wanted to confirm that the Cadillac you requested will arrive this afternoon, and the Lexus will arrive early tomorrow." I had decided to buy 2 luxury cars. Nothing too extravagant, but enough so that anyone who saw them would know that their owner had cash to spare. The silver Cadillac was elegant and sophisticated. The black Lexus was sporty and eye-catching. After breakfast, I put on my best dress, the burgundy one that Henry had given me for our 30th anniversary, and headed to my new house. When I stepped out of the taxi in front of the mansion, I saw the curtains of Robert's house move slightly. I knew they were watching me. "Miss Amelia, welcome to your new home." Stephen greeted me with a professional smile. "Would you like to take a tour to verify that everything is as you requested?" The transformation was incredible. What was an empty house a week ago was now a mansion worthy of a decorating magazine. The entrance hall had a crystal chandelier, which cost more than Robert earned in 2 months. The main living room was furnished with Italian leather sofas and a marble coffee table that had belonged to a distinguished European family. "Stephen, it's perfect. Better than I imagined." "We are glad to hear that, Miss Amelia. I also wanted to inform you that we installed the security system you requested, including the exterior cameras. You can monitor everything from your phone. Perfect. Now I could observe Robert and Mary's reactions from the comfort of my new living room. That afternoon, while the workers were finishing the final details, I decided to take a walk in the garden. It was impossible not to notice that Mary had come out to water her plants, something the housekeeper normally did. She clearly wanted an excuse to see me up close. "Excuse me," she called out from her garden. "Are you the new owner?" I approached the fence separating our properties, pretending not to know her. "Yes, I just moved in today. I'm Amelia Hayes." I used my maiden name, something Hugh had suggested to maintain the charade a little longer. What a coincidence. My name is Mary too. Welcome to the neighborhood. Her smile was genuine, but I could see the curiosity burning in her eyes. "Did you move in alone?" "Yes, I was widowed a few years ago. I decided it was time for a change of scenery." I wasn't technically lying, just omitting some important details. "Oh, I'm so sorry. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to knock on our door. My husband and I have been living here for several years." "How kind of you. My previous house was much smaller, so all of this is quite new to me." I gestured toward the mansion with a modest smile. "It's a beautiful house. It must have cost a fortune." Well, when one has worked all their life and suddenly comes across an unexpected inheritance, I left the sentence hanging, allowing her imagination to fill in the blanks. Mary's eyes widened slightly. How lucky! An inheritance like that must have been an incredible surprise. The truth is, it was. My late husband was much smarter than I thought. It turns out he had been making investments that I didn't even know about. Just then, the Cadillac arrived with a soft roar of the engine. The driver, uniformed and professional, got out and handed me the keys with an almost theatrical bow. "Your vehicle, Mrs. Hayes. Everything is in order." "Thank you, Chris. The Lexus will arrive tomorrow as planned." "Of course, ma'am. At 9 o'clock in the morning." Mary watched the scene with her mouth slightly open. When the driver left, she moved closer to the fence. 2 new cars? Well, one for daily use and one for special occasions. At my age, you realize that cash is useless if you don't enjoy it, don't you think? I totally agree. Mary seemed to be recalculating everything she thought about life. "Would you like to come over for dinner tonight? My husband would love to meet you." "I would love to, but tonight I have an appointment with my financial advisor. We have to review some investments." "How about tomorrow?" "Perfect. At 7 o'clock. I'll see you then." That night, I did indeed have a meeting with Hugh, but not in his office, but in my new living room. I wanted him to see the setting we had created with his own eyes. "Amelia, this is impressive. It looks like a European millionaire's home." Hugh poured himself a glass of the wine he had brought to celebrate. "Well, technically I am a millionaire, and soon I'll be European if I want to be." I smiled as I reviewed the documents he had brought. "How is everything else going?" "Excellent. You are officially the owner of the building where Robert's office is located. I also bought his loan from the bank. Starting tomorrow, he officially owes you $500,000, and he doesn't know it yet. The bank will send him the official notification on Friday. They will inform him that his loan has been transferred to a new creditor, but he will only receive the name of the shell company we created for you." "Perfect. And the shell company, Valley Investments, Inc. It sounds serious and professional. On the papers you appear as the president, but under your maiden name." "Hugh, you are a genius." "No. Amelia, you are the genius. I am just the instrument." Hugh raised his glass. "Do you know what impresses me the most about all this?" "What?" "That you're not doing this for revenge. You're doing this for love. A very tough love, but love nonetheless." He was right. Every part of my plan was designed not to destroy Robert, but to rebuild him, to teach him what truly mattered in life before it was too late. "What's the next step?" Hugh asked. "Tomorrow I'm having dinner with them. They are going to meet their new millionaire neighbour. After that, we wait for Robert to receive the bank notification. And then," I took a sip of my wine, "then his real education will begin." The next day, exactly at 7 o'clock, I rang the doorbell of the house that was once mine. Robert opened the door, and for a moment he seemed confused. I looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place me. "Good evening. You must be Mary's husband. I'm Amelia Hayes, your new neighbour." "Robert Sanchez. Nice to meet you." He shook my hand with that commercial smile he used with potential clients. "Mary told me you moved in yesterday. Welcome to the neighbourhood." "Thank you. I hope you don't mind having a neighbour so close. The previous house I had was much more isolated." "Not at all. We love having pleasant neighbours." Mary appeared from the kitchen, radiant. She had set the table with her best china and had cooked what looked like a 3-course meal. "Amelia, you look beautiful. That coral-coloured dress looks perfect on you." "Thank you, dear. You look radiant, too." During the first few minutes of dinner, Robert was the perfect host. He asked me about my previous house, about my plans for the garden, about my impression of the neighbourhood. But I could see in his eyes that calculating look that appeared when he met someone who could be useful to him. "And what did your husband do for a living?" he asked while pouring the wine. "He was a financial consultant. He worked mainly with real estate investments." It wasn't exactly a lie. Henry had worked in finance before retiring. "How interesting. I have my own consulting company. Maybe we could talk business sometime." There it was, the Robert who looked for opportunities in every conversation, who saw every new person as a possible client or useful contact. Of course, although I must admit that since I inherited, I've been more focused on enjoying life than on making more cash. I dropped the word inherited casually, as if it were unimportant. An important inheritance. Robert tried to sound casual, but Mary gave him a warning look. "Let's just say my husband was much more far-sighted than I imagined. Apparently he had been investing in secret for decades." I took a sip of wine. "When he died, I discovered that he had properties, stocks, savings accounts that I didn't even know existed." "How wonderful!" exclaimed Mary. "It must have been like winning the lottery." Exactly how it felt. Suddenly, I went from being a widow worried about cash to having more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I saw how Robert's eyes lit up. I could practically see the gears turning in his head, calculating how he could benefit from this new, rich, and seemingly naive neighbour. "And tell me, Amelia, have you thought about new investments? Because if you're interested, my company manages very interesting investment portfolios." "Robert," Mary interrupted him with a nervous laugh. "We just met Amelia. Don't overwhelm her with work." But I smiled sweetly. "Don't worry, Mary. I love talking about investments. Maybe we could meet up sometime, Robert, so you can tell me about your company." Robert's eyes sparkled like a child's on Christmas morning. He had no idea that he had just invited to dinner the woman who literally owned his future. On Friday morning, while drinking my coffee on the terrace of my new mansion, I saw the mail carrier arrive at Robert's house. He was carrying a certified envelope that I immediately recognized. The official bank notification about the transfer of his loan. From my privileged position, I could observe the whole scene. Robert came out in his bathrobe, signed the receipt, and stood on the porch reading the letter. I saw his expression change from curiosity to confusion, then to worry, and finally to absolute panic. He ran inside, shouting Mary's name. 5 minutes later, they both rushed out to his car. Robert hadn't even changed out of his bathrobe into appropriate clothes. It was clear they were heading straight to the bank. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Hugh. Amelia, Robert just arrived at the bank in a fury. My contact there tells me he's yelling that there must be a mistake, that he never authorized the transfer of his loan. And what did they tell him? Exactly what we agreed, that the bank sold several assets as part of its corporate restructuring, that everything is legally in order, and that he must now address his new creditor for any negotiation. Perfect. Did they give him the contact information for the shell company? Yes, but only the phone number and a mailing address. Nothing that would lead him directly to you. I hung up and sat down to wait. I didn't have to wait long. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Robert rang the doorbell of my mansion. When I opened the door, I found a man completely different from the charming host of 2 nights ago. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes, dishevelled hair, and that expression of desperation that only appears when someone realizes they are losing everything. Amelia, forgive me for bothering you, but I need an urgent favor. Of course, Robert. What can I do for you? Do you know a good lawyer? Or maybe someone who understands bank finances? I have a very serious problem. Come in, please. Tell me what's going on. I led him into my new living room, watching his eyes scan the expensive furniture, the artwork, the ostentatious decor. I could see him mentally calculating the value of everything he saw. The bank sold my loan to another company without notifying me. Now I owe $500,000 to a company I don't even know, and I need to renew or pay it off in 3 months. My goodness, $500,000. That is a considerable sum. It's everything I have. Amelia, if I can't renew that loan or get a guarantor, I lose my company, I lose my house, I lose everything. His hands were shaking as he spoke. And you don't have family who can help you? Parents? Siblings? Robert made a bitter face. My father died years ago. And my mother... He stopped, as if mentioning his mother was painful. My mother doesn't have cash. She's an elderly woman who lives off a minimal pension. Interesting. In his desperation, he had reduced my existence to an elderly woman living off a minimal pension. He didn't even consider that I could be an option to help him. And friends? Partners? Those friends you saw at the Christmas Eve dinner disappeared as soon as I mentioned cash. It turns out that business friendships are not the same as real friendships. Robert, can I ask you something personal? Of course. How did you end up owing so much cash? Robert sighed deeply and sank into my Italian leather sofa. 2 years ago, I decided to expand the company. I took out loans to buy equipment, hire more staff, rent bigger offices. Everything was going well until we lost 3 important clients last year. Suddenly the income dropped, but the debts were still there. And does your wife know all this? Mary knows we have problems, but she doesn't know how serious they are. I don't want to worry her more than necessary. I understand. I got up and walked toward the window, pretending I was thinking. Robert, can I ask you a very direct question? Sure. If you had the cash to save your company, what would you do differently? Everything. His answer was immediate. I would be more careful with investments, more humble with clients, more honest with my family. This crisis has taught me that success can disappear overnight. And your relationship with your mother? You said she doesn't have cash to help you. Robert lowered his head, clearly embarrassed. My relationship with my mother is complicated. Lately, I've been very harsh with her, especially on Christmas Eve. I said things I shouldn't have said. Like what? I told her she didn't contribute anything, that she wasn't welcome in my house. I humiliated her in front of my guests. His eyes filled with tears. Amelia, I think I'm the worst person in the world. My mother sacrificed everything for me when I was young, and I treated her like garbage when I thought I didn't need her anymore. Finally, there was the crack I had been waiting for, the first real sign of remorse. Have you spoken to her since then? I tried to fix things with a lunch, but she acted very strangely, as if she had accepted that I didn't want her anymore. That hurt me more than any reproach. Robert, I can give you some advice. Please. I think that before solving your financial problems, you need to solve your family problems. Cash comes and goes, but family is forever. You're right. Completely right. Robert wiped his eyes with his sleeve. But right now, I'm so desperate that I don't even know how to approach her. Do you know where she lives? In a small apartment on the other side of Los Angeles. She's probably there now, alone, hating me. I sat down next to him on the sofa. Robert, how about we do this? You go look for your mother, apologize to her for real, and in the meantime, I'll make some calls to see if I know anyone who can help you with the loan issue. His eyes lit up. You would do that for me? You're my neighbor, and besides, I like you. But there's one condition. Whatever it is. I want you to go to your mother without pretensions. Don't mention the cash. Don't talk about your problems. Just go sincerely apologize for how you treated her. But what if she doesn't forgive me? Robert, if you were my son, and you came to sincerely ask for forgiveness, I would forgive you anything. That's how mothers are made. Robert got up from the sofa with an energy he hadn't had in days. You're right. I'm going to look for her right now. You know what? Take my Cadillac. Your car looks a little stressed. It was true. His Lexus had small dents and needed a good wash. I can't accept that, Amelia. Of course you can. Neighbors help each other. I handed him the keys. Besides, maybe arriving in an elegant car shows your mother that you're not completely broke. After Robert left, I called Hugh. Everything is according to plan? He asked. Better than I expected. Robert just left for my apartment to look for me to apologize. And are you going to be there? Of course not. I'm going to be here, in my mansion, waiting for him to return without having found me. When he comes back, he'll be even more desperate and more remorseful. Amelia, sometimes you scare me. Hugh, this isn't malice. This is emotional surgery. Sometimes you have to cut deep to heal completely. 2 hours later, I saw the Cadillac return. Robert walked slowly toward my door, his shoulders slumped and an expression of total defeat. When I opened the door before he said a word, I could see that he had been crying. She wasn't home, he said simply. Oh, Robert, I'm so sorry. I knocked and knocked, but no one answered. Her neighbor told me she hasn't seen her in several days. Of course she hadn't seen me. I had been living in my mansion. Are you worried? Terribly. What if something happened to her? What if she's sick in some hospital and I don't even know it because I'm the worst son in the world? Robert, calm down. I'm sure she's fine. Maybe she went on a trip, or she's visiting a friend. My mother doesn't have friends. Amelia, she doesn't have the cash to travel. She only had me, and I destroyed her. It was perfect. Robert was exactly where he needed to be, desperate for cash, remorseful for his behavior, and terrified of having lost his mother forever. Now came the most delicate part of my plan. Robert, sit down. I'll prepare you some tea, and we'll think together about how to find your mother. I led him back into my living room, watching him sink into the sofa as if the entire weight of the world were on his shoulders. While preparing the tea in my new marble kitchen, I heard my phone ring. It was Hugh, but I couldn't answer with Robert so close. I sent him a quick message. Robert here. Call in 1 hour. I returned with the tea and sat across from him. Robert, have you tried calling her? 50 times. Her phone is off or out of service. He put his hands to his face. Amelia, what if my mother decided she doesn't want anything to do with me anymore? What if she changed her number, moved, disappeared from my life forever? I don't think a mother would do that, no matter how hurt she is. But I was so cruel to her. I humiliated her in front of strangers. I told her she was worthless, that she didn't contribute to my life. His words were choked with emotion. Do you know what hurts me the most? That everything I have is thanks to her. What do you mean? My mother sold everything she had to pay for my college. She sold my grandmother's jewelry. She sold furniture. She even sold the house where I grew up. All so I could study and have a better future. Robert started crying openly. And when I finally succeeded, when I could finally give her a better life, I rejected her as if she were a nuisance. You gave her a better life. Well, He stopped, confused by my question. I gave her cash sometimes. I invited her to lunch occasionally. But I guess it wasn't enough. She was still living in that small apartment, still buying clothes at discount stores, still cooking with coupons. Robert raised his head and looked directly at me. My God, Amelia. My mother remained poor while I became rich. I never made sure she had a decent life. And why do you think that happened? Because I'm selfish. Because once I had cash, I wanted to forget about everything that reminded me of the difficult times. And my mother was that living reminder. Exactly. He had reached the core of the problem without me having to guide him much. Robert, what would you do if you found her right now? I would beg her on my knees for forgiveness. I would give her half of everything I have. I would move her into a decent house, buy her nice clothes, make sure she never had to worry about cash again. He wiped his tears. If I even have anything left to give her after I lose everything because of these loans. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me I should answer. Excuse me for a moment, Robert. I answered the call, moving away toward the kitchen. Mrs. Hayes? It was a female voice I didn't recognize. Yes, this is she. This is Anna Garcia from St. John's Hospital. Do you know a woman named Amelia Sanchez? My heart stopped for a second. How had they gotten my new number? But then I remembered that Hugh had put both of my numbers as emergency contacts on several documents. Why do you ask me? The woman is here in the emergency room. Apparently she collapsed in the street and someone called an ambulance. When we checked her wallet, we found a card with your name and number as an emergency contact. Perfect. This was an opportunity I hadn't planned, but one I could use brilliantly. Oh my God, is she all right? It's serious. She's stable, but she needs someone to come and pick her up. I can come. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up and rushed back to the living room, where Robert was still steeped in his misery. Robert, I just got a call from the hospital. What? What hospital? St. John's. They have a woman there who collapsed in the street. They called me because apparently they had my number as an emergency contact. Do you think it could be my mother? I don't know, but describe the woman. They said she's an elderly woman, grey hair, wearing a burgundy dress. Robert's eyes widened. That's my mother's favourite dress. It has to be her. Let's go immediately. Take my car keys. Amelia, I don't know how to thank you for this. Don't thank me for anything. Just let's make sure your mother is okay. The trip to the hospital was tense. Robert drove with shaky hands, murmuring prayers and promises. Please, God, let her be okay. Please give us one more chance. When we arrived at the emergency room, we ran to the information desk. We're here for Amelia Sanchez, Robert said to the receptionist. Are you family? I'm her son. Perfect. The woman is in room 12, but let me call the doctor first. 5 minutes later, a young doctor appeared with a reassuring smile. The good news is that your mother is perfectly fine. She collapsed due to dehydration and probably not having eaten all day. Nothing serious, but she needs rest and better nutrition. Can I see her? Robert asked. Of course. She's awake and asking for you. Robert headed toward room 12, but I stayed in the waiting room. I couldn't risk him seeing me and ruining the whole charade. Doctor, I said to the doctor, feigning worry, is it normal for an elderly person to collapse from not eating? Unfortunately, yes. We see many cases of older adults who don't eat well, either due to financial problems or depression. Depression. The woman told us she had been having family problems recently. Sometimes, when older adults feel abandoned or rejected, they stop taking care of themselves. Perfect. Even the doctor was confirming the narrative I needed. After 20 minutes, Robert came out of the room with red, swollen eyes. How is she? I asked him. Physically fine, but emotionally destroyed. His voice broke. Amelia, my mother has been depressed since Christmas Eve. She hasn't been eating well. She hasn't been sleeping. All because of me. What did she tell you? That she forgives me, but that she understands if I don't want her in my life. That she just wants me to be happy, even if it means being without her. Robert sat down in one of the plastic chairs in the waiting room. She told me she had gone out for a walk to clear her head, that she was thinking of moving to another city where no one knew her. Moving? Why? To not be a burden to me, to not embarrass me anymore with my rich friends. Robert put his head in his hands. Amelia, my mother was planning to disappear from my life forever because she thought that would make me happy. And what did you tell her? I told her I was an idiot. I told her I loved her more than anything in the world. I told her that without her, none of my success makes sense. Robert lifted his head and looked at me. I promised her that things are going to change, that I'm going to be the son she deserves. And did she believe you? I think she wants to believe me, but she's very hurt. It's going to take time to rebuild her trust. The doctor reappeared. You can take her home whenever you want. Just make sure she eats well and rests. Doctor, what would you recommend for someone in her situation? I mean, besides food and rest. Emotional support. The woman needs to feel loved and valued. At her age, family is the most important thing they have. Robert nodded solemnly. Doctor, my mother is going to have all the support she needs. I promise you. When we finally left the hospital, with my plan perfectly executed, without either of them knowing the truth, Robert took my arm. Amelia, I don't know how to repay you for what you did today. You helped me find my mother when I had lost all hope. Robert, sometimes things happen for a reason. Maybe it was destined that I would be the person to receive that call. You're right. And you know what? I don't care about losing the company or the house anymore. The only thing that matters is that my mother is okay and that we can rebuild our relationship. I smiled. After years of planning, I had finally made Robert understand what truly mattered in life. But there was still one more lesson to learn. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched from my mansion as Robert completely transformed. Every day, I saw him leave early in the morning and return in the afternoons, always carrying bags of food, flowers, or small gifts. Mary had told me that he was visiting his mother religiously, bringing her home-cooked meals and spending hours with her. It's as if I got my husband back, Mary had told me one afternoon while we were having coffee in my garden. Since the scare at the hospital, Robert is a completely different person. More loving, more present, more human. And how is he handling the stress of the financial problems? Surprisingly well. He says he realized that there are more important things than cash. Mary sighed. Although I don't know what we're going to do when the loan due date arrives. It was Friday afternoon when Hugh called me with the news I had been waiting for. Amelia, Robert just sent a formal letter to the Shell company asking for an urgent meeting. He wants to negotiate the terms of the loan. What exactly does the letter say? It's quite humble, to be honest. He acknowledges that he is in a difficult financial situation, explains that his company went through a bad time, and asks for the opportunity to present an alternative payment plan. Did he mention any collateral or guarantee? Yes. He says he is willing to put his house and his personal assets as additional collateral. He also mentions that he has a family member who could be a moral, although not financial, guarantor. A family member who could be a moral guarantor. It had to be me, the poor mother who had no cash but had regained his trust. Hugh, schedule a meeting for Monday, but I want it to be in your office, and I want you to pretend to be the representative of the creditor company. Are you sure? Don't you think it's time to reveal the truth? Not yet. I need to see if he has truly learned the lesson, or if all this transformation disappears, when he is under extreme pressure. On Monday morning, from my security camera, I saw Robert leave his house dressed in his best suit. He had a haircut, shaved carefully, and was carrying a briefcase that seemed to contain his entire professional life. But what struck me the most was that he stopped in front of my mansion and stood there for several minutes, as if he were gathering his courage. Finally, he rang my doorbell. Amelia, good morning. I know it's very early, but I wanted to ask you a favor before going to a very important meeting. Of course, Robert. What is it? Today I have the meeting with the company that bought my loan. It's my last chance to save everything I've built. His hands were shaking slightly. I was wondering if you could wish me luck. I know it sounds silly, but I need all the positive energy I can get. It doesn't sound silly at all. I put my hands on his shoulders. Robert, no matter what happens in that meeting, you've already won the most important thing. What do you mean? You got your mother back. You got your humanity back. That's worth more than any company or house. His eyes filled with tears. You're right. A month ago, the only thing I cared about was cash and status. Now I understand that none of that means anything if you don't have the people you love by your side. And if I can't save the company, then I'll start over. More humble, wiser, and with the right priorities. Robert straightened his shoulders. My mother taught me that you can be happy with very little, as long as you have love. I'm glad to hear that. Amelia, there's something else. If everything goes wrong today, Mary and I will probably have to sell the house. I was wondering if you know someone who might be interested in buying it. My heart sped up. This was the perfect opportunity. Well, the truth is, I've been thinking about buying an investment property in this neighborhood. Your house is beautiful. Seriously, you would be interested? We can talk after your meeting, but don't worry about that now. Focus on giving your best at that meeting. Robert left, and I immediately called Hugh to make sure everything was ready. 2 hours later, Hugh called me to tell me how everything had gone. Amelia, your son is a completely new man. He entered the meeting with a genuine humility that I had never seen in him. What did he propose? A 5-year payment plan, with reduced interest. He offered his house as additional collateral, and something that surprised me a lot, he offered to cut his own salary in half to ensure the company can make the payments. Cut his salary? He said he had learned that he can live with much less than he thought, and that he preferred to keep his company and his employees than maintain a luxurious lifestyle. And what else? He also proposed that if at any point he can't make a payment, the company can take everything immediately without legal process. Basically, he put everything he has in the creditor's hands. And how did he react when you told him that the company needed time to consider the proposal? With a serenity that impressed me. He said he understood perfectly, that he knew he had made financial mistakes, and that any consideration he received would be more than he deserved. Hugh, I think it's time to move to the next phase. What is it? Tonight, I'm having dinner with Robert and Mary. I'm going to offer to buy their house, but with a special condition. What condition? That they can continue living there, paying a symbolic rent, while Robert proves that he has truly changed. Amelia, that's very generous. It's not generosity, Hugh. It's the first part of my final gift. That night, when I arrived for dinner at Robert's house, I found a completely different atmosphere from my previous visits. The table was set simply, with normal plates instead of the fine china. The food was homemade and simple, roast chicken with vegetables. None of the elaborate dishes that Mary used to prepare to impress. "How was the meeting?" Mary asked as soon as we sat down. "Better than I expected. The company representative was very professional, listened to my proposal, and said they would give me an answer in a few days." "And if they say no?" Mary asked. "Then we will accept the consequences with dignity." Robert took his wife's hand. "Mary, I've been talking with my mother about the possibility of the three of us moving to a smaller apartment if we lose the house." "The three of us?" "My mother is going to come live with us, no matter where we end up. I'm not going to let her live alone in that small apartment anymore." Robert looked at me. "Amelia, I told you my mother had been considering moving to another city." "Seriously?" "Yes, but I convinced her to stay. I promised her that this time things would be different." Robert smiled, but it was a different smile than the ones I had seen on him before. Softer, more genuine. "You know, losing all this has taught me what really matters." "And what is it that really matters?" "Family, authentic relationships, being able to sleep soundly, knowing that I haven't hurt anyone to get what I have." Mary nodded. "Robert told me about how he treated his mother on Christmas Eve. I couldn't believe he was the same person I married." "But I'm not that person anymore," Robert said firmly. "That person was a selfish stranger who had taken over my body. Now it's me again." "Robert, Mary, I have something to propose to you." I put my fork down on the plate. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning about selling the house. Yes, I would like to buy it." The eyes of both of them opened in surprise. "But with a special condition," I continued. "I want you to continue living here, paying a very low rent, until you resolve your financial situation." "Amelia, we can't accept something like that," Mary said. "Why not?" "Because it would be charity, and we have to face the consequences of our mistakes," Robert replied. I smiled. That answer told me everything I needed to know. Robert had truly changed. It was time to reveal the truth. "Robert, Mary, there's something I need to tell you." I got up from the table and walked toward the window, looking out at my illuminated mansion. "Something that will change everything you think you know about me." "What's wrong, Amelia? You look very serious," Mary said. "First, I want you to know that everything you've seen in these weeks has been real. Your transformation, Robert, your remorse, your renewed love for your mother, all of that is genuine." "Amelia, you're scaring me," Robert murmured. I turned around and looked directly at them. "My name is not Amelia Hayes. My name is Amelia Sanchez." The silence in the room was deafening. I saw Robert's eyes slowly widen, as if he were processing information his brain refused to accept. That's not That's not possible, he whispered. Robert, I am your mother. Mary put her hands to her mouth with a gasp. Robert stood completely motionless, as if he had seen a ghost. No, no, no. My mother lives in a small apartment. My mother doesn't have cash. My mother— His voice broke. My mother is in the hospital recovering. Your mother was never in the hospital, son. That woman you visited was an actress I hired. Your mother has been living in the mansion next door for these 2 weeks, watching you become the man I always knew you could be. Robert got up from the table so abruptly that his chair fell backward. This is impossible. You have cash, luxury cars, a mansion. I have $8 million in investments that your father made in secret before he died. I have properties worth $3 million more. And since yesterday, I pulled an envelope from my purse. I am officially the owner of your $500,000 loan. What? Mary also stood up. The company Valley Investments Inc. is me, Robert. You owe the cash to me. I also own the building where your office is located. And indeed, I just bought this house. Robert began pacing back and forth across the room, running his hands through his hair. I don't understand anything. Why? Why did you do this to me? Why on Christmas Eve did you tell me that I didn't contribute anything? Why did you humiliate me in front of strangers? Why had you become someone I didn't recognize as my son? But I already apologized. I already changed. Why did you continue with this charade? Because I needed to make sure your change was real. I needed to know if, when you were under extreme pressure, when you lost everything, you would still be the good man your father and I raised. Mary approached me with tears in her eyes. Amelia, all this time, when I was telling you our problems, when I was crying with you about the financial situation, all this time I was waiting for Robert to learn the most important lesson of his life. And what is that lesson? Robert asked, his voice full of a mixture of pain and confusion. That a mother's love is priceless. That family is not something to be taken for granted. That respect is earned with actions, not with cash. Robert sat down on the sofa, burying his face in his hands. Mum, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, son. You just have to continue being the man you've become in these weeks. But everything was a lie. My remorse was for a situation that wasn't even real. Your remorse was a lie, I challenged him. No, of course not. Your love for me is a lie. Never. Your decision to change your priorities is a lie. No, Mum. All of that is real. Then nothing was a lie, Robert. The feelings were real. The lessons were real. The growth was real. Mary sat down next to her husband and took his hands. Robert, don't you realize? Your mother never abandoned you. Even when you treated her badly, she continued to take care of you. Only this time she did it by teaching you instead of rescuing you. Robert lifted his head and looked at me with eyes full of tears. Mum, can you forgive me? I already forgave you a long time ago, son. But more importantly, can you forgive yourself? I don't know if I can. I was so cruel to you. Robert, do you know the moment I knew you had truly changed? Which one? Tonight, when you said you preferred to face the consequences of your mistakes rather than accept charity. That was the moment I knew you had regained your integrity. I approached him and sat on his other side. Son, for 5 years I pretended to be poor because I wanted you to learn the value of effort. But on Christmas Eve, I realized that I had waited too long. What's going to happen now? Mary asked. Now we are going to build a new relationship, one based on honesty, mutual respect, and true love. I took all the documents out of my purse. Robert, Your loan is cancelled. The building for your office, I'm giving it to you. And this house is yours again. No conditions. Mum, I can't accept. It's not charity, son. It's your inheritance. It's what your father worked his whole life to give you. Only now you receive it when you truly deserve it. Robert started crying, as I hadn't seen him do since he was a child. Mum, forgive me. Forgive me for everything. You are already forgiven, my love. From the moment you were born, you were already forgiven. Mary was also crying. Amelia, you are the wisest woman I have ever met. I am not wise, dear. I am just a mother who loves her son enough to teach him the difficult lessons. Robert hugged me with a strength I hadn't felt in years. I love you, Mum. I love you more than words can express. And I love you, son. I have always loved you, even when I didn't like the person you had become. Will you live here with us? Mary asked. We can be a real family. I would love to. But first, there's something else we have to do. What is it? Tomorrow, the three of us are going to have breakfast together, as a family. And then we're going to visit families who truly need help. Because now that Robert has learned the value of love, it's time for him to learn the value of giving it. Robert smiled through his tears. You know what, Mum? For the first time in my adult life, I feel truly rich. Why? Because I have everything that really matters. I have you, I have Mary, I have my integrity back, and I have the opportunity to be a better person every day. That night, as we stayed up late, talking, laughing, and crying together, I realized that my plan had worked better than I ever imagined. I hadn't saved Robert with cash. I had saved him by teaching him to save himself. And that is the only way a mother can truly save her son, not by solving his life for him, but by teaching him to live it with honor, love, and wisdom. In the end, the best revenge wasn't taking away everything he had. The best revenge was giving him back everything he had lost without realizing it: his soul, his heart, and the unconditional love of his mother. Because sometimes, to save someone you love, you have to be willing to break their heart first, only to then help them rebuild it stronger than before.